Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Dreamcast Junkyard video game book club. I was just caught out there. Didn't think it was going to end. I was trying to check my phone to check the stream is live, but I'm going to have to just trust my judgment. Now, joining me today, we're going to be talking about some games that you'll probably pick out from the terrible puns I'm about to do. Next up on the podium, as always, I'm going to hand the baton over to you, Mike. Hello, how are you?
Good evening, Kev. I'm good. I'm looking forward to a good stream about my favourite genre of all time.
Being very cryptic. And then Mike is going to hand the baton over to our third leg. Someone who is below us on the screens here, but would very clearly be above us in the medals table going by the real Olympics. It is Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
I'm very sad that you've worn a much better hat than me. I've got a hat on today because I've not washed my hair. I'm not going to lie. But yours is superior. So I will already conceding the first event, which is hats to you, and the second event, which is beards to both of you. So not.
I think Mike takes that one. Really?
He probably does take that one. So he's bringing that one home for the good old Great Britain. Right. So as you've probably picked up, we're going to be talking about athletics games. I would commonly call this button mashers. I'm going to start with you guys. What would you call this genre of games?
It's not far off. Yeah, I mean, I guess they've kind of evolved a little bit throughout the years, to give them credit, and that especially nowadays, playing like the most recent Sega Tokyo 2020, I think they've veered a little bit away from the button mashing and more to like rhythmic and other types of inputs. So they've evolved for the better from that, but certainly they're rooted in that sheer button mashing heritage for sure.
Yeah, probably a good one. What about you, Mike? Button masher? Have you got a different?
Yeah, button masher, Olympic game, multi-sport game. Lots of different sort of definitions, isn't there? I think it's but everyone knows what you mean by button masher, especially if you're in the UK, because I think we all grew up with the same games.
Yeah, so I was gonna say I've not seen him in a while, but a friend of mine, he'd always be like, "Put Olympic gold on," even when it was 2005, and he was talking about Track and Field 2 on the PlayStation or PlayStation PS2 or something like that. So yeah, everyone knew what he meant. So we're going to be talking about 3 games today, then, guys. We're going to be talking about, and I'll cut across to Mike, see if he's got any different variants to me. We're going to be talking about ESPN Track and Field. You can see it. I like to keep
that one.
There we go. Look at that. Clean sweep.
All 3, yeah.
All 3 territories. We're also going to be talking about Sydney 2000.
It's the same. It's the same.
Pretty much the same.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Boring.
And then one that I'm going to guess is probably different is Virtual Athlete 2K from the Sega Sports Series. Is that is it the same guy on all of them? I can't work that out.
I think it is, yeah.
He's got a white vest on here. It's interesting that they would choose to photograph him multiple times. Oh, you can't have him in a yellow vest in the Europe market. The Europeans won't stand for it. I'm not sure what's happened. So we're going to be looking at these games today. Now, here is a question. Not a question. Here is something we'd normally talk about much nearer the end, but I have got this already queued up. Now, this is the first set of games. This is the 7th video game book club we've done now, but it's the first set of games that are not in the top 200 anywhere. None of them. So, which is odd because they're quite popular. And on the link, it's not scrolled down, but on the link, one of the comments we've got is someone giving Virtual 2K an honourable shout out. So, there we are. So it's quite a strange thing for us to have a look at as a collective. But despite that, they're quite popular games. I know mine and Mike's friendship was truly solidified when I realized that he was as into this as I am, Brian, because I'd never met anyone who cares about button mashing games the way I did before. Let's go start with you then, Brian. Did you play any of these in the contemporary era? It's a question we always have on every episode, but
the only one I really played at the time was Sydney 2000. I rented it and I played the demo in the Dreamcast magazine that I believe was the 110-meter hurdles. So that's kind of what piqued my interest in it, and I kind of liked the the relatively chill atmosphere and vibe of it. So it did catch my attention, but yeah, I didn't really play it too much back then. And really it wasn't until the years since that I've played the other two at all. In fact, maybe within the last couple of years. And it wasn't even until we were doing this podcast that I actually played through all the events on all of them. So yeah.
And then same question to you, Mike.
Yeah, so Sydney 2000 I played at time on PC, so the PC version. I'm not going to spoil it by saying what I think about the game, but yeah, I played a lot of it on PC. Didn't play it on Dreamcast until probably 10 years ago, and the other two again didn't play until like 10 years ago. I didn't really have the Dreamcast for that kind of game at the time. So
okay, excellent. Yeah, and then with me, this game makes me think that I didn't vote in that 2016 top 200 because Mike already knows where I'm going with this. This is probably one of my favorite games on the Dreamcast. Bizarrely, it's got a bizarre emotional attachment to me. I was about to drop out of university when I was 18. I was really tragically homesick. I'd been like, I just turned 18, been carted off. Hadn't really made any friends. I was in town. I just received like my first student loan payment. I found this shop in Cheltenham, ePlay, Games Exchange, and I bought this, and I bought Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which I think I paid even less than $22.99 for that one. Didn't really like Marvel. Absolutely loved track and field. and a few days later, when I'd finally met some course mates, I explained to one of them. He was like, "What have you been doing?" I was like, "I've not really been doing a lot. I've been like staying in my room and playing Dreamcast." And he was like, "What have you been playing?" And I was like, "Track and field." And he was like, "Hey, this guy's got Dreamcast. He's got 4 pads. And he's got track and field." And then suddenly, my room was just full of. And I had loads of friends because people were just like, "Let's go and play Dreamcast with the Dreamcast guy." And it's like, I finally got a thing. I finally got a thing people know me for, other than being quiet and a bit sad. So without track and field, I would not be here today in this room full of Sega-y crap doing this stream to our wonderful audience.
I will say, Kev, that actually you did vote for it.
Did I?
Yes, you did, because you were the only person to vote for the game.
And that would be why it didn't get in. There we go. I'm glad Mike waited to the end to drop that nugget on us. I was going to say, I'm sure I was around about that time. So we are going to talk about these games, okay? And we're going to talk about button mashers in general. I'm going to start, as soon as I find my graphics, I'm going to start with a question for you both. Here it is. So this genre, it's just mindlessly pressing the button. I'm going to go with Mike for his answer first. We've got contrasting it. Mike, give me your answer.
It's a factually incorrect statement, isn't it? I mean, it's not track and field. It's not the original track and field type game, especially Sydney 2000, which has a wide range of different events. The genre can be quite large in scope or quite narrow. Yes, you can do it just to be sort of button mashing only. Track and field, Denny Thompson decathlon back on Spectrum, Olympic gold to an extent was a little bit like that. But also the genre has a much wider scope, mainly in winter sports. So winter sports games have a wider scope because the controls have to be so different. But also in summer games, as Brian said earlier, the latest one from Sega, it's a selection of mini games more than it is a series of button mashers, and that's been the same really since. I'm trying to think. I suppose Athens 2004 was the last real traditional button masher, as it were. 2008 wasn't. I think 2004 was actually the last non-Sega one as well, wasn't it? If I remember rightly.
I think so. Yeah,
it was, wasn't
it?
Yeah. Sega's had it since like what, Beijing or 2008.
Yeah. I think the genre is. The genre is a very, very wide genre. I think, the Mario and Sonic games, they're not button mashers. Yes, there are elements of the game which are button mashers, but that's like saying that every, first-person shooter is a aim and shoot, or every single shoot 'em up has the same basic gameplay, and it's pointless because of that. It's a very, very narrow definition of something. I think these 3 games, whilst they're not as expansive or as innovative as some of the newer ones, there is a wide, especially in one of them, has a wide different sort of control mechanisms and doesn't just restrict itself to button mashing.
Yeah, true. Brian, what would you have you got anything to add to that? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that I think winter Olympic type games inherently lend themselves to more diversity as far as having, snowboarding and slalom events. Like, you're generally having steering and precision control mechanics as opposed to like speed skating, which will be more of the quote unquote button mashy or rhythmic inputs, and then ski jumps and all of that just are somewhere in between. And I do like the more multifaceted events, which show up in both summer and winter Olympic games, where you have a little bit of both, where you have to build up speed with button mashing, but then you have to do precision or, hold the button or do some sort of throw or high jump. So I think the multi-tiered, they just got a little more complex, I think, as time went on. And that's benefited them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna start diving in, and I'm gonna address the elephant in the room. I'm gonna have a look at Virtual Athlete 2K, and I'm gonna start with it's not a very original question, and I'm just trying to find this graphic here that I've just made, but here it is. Why is it not as good as Athlete Kings? So it would be completely remiss of us to not acknowledge that. Now, if you have got a Saturn, and I have dug out, just because I don't think I've never had any Saturn games on here. So Athlete Kings, Brian, remind me what this is called elsewhere.
It's Decathlete.
Decathlete, there we are.
Yeah, named after the decathlon, basically.
Yeah. So this is a spiritual successor to it, and it's a spiritual successor in the fact that some of the graphics are the same, some of the events are the same, but it's ultimately not as good, is it?
No,
it's nowhere near as good. Why is that? Can we answer that?
In terms of an actual factual statement, well, it's less events. It hasn't got any of the sort of arcade style of Athlete Kings. It has this weird thing where you have to select which sports the athlete's good at, and it's meant to affect the performance of your athlete, but doesn't really do a huge amount of difference, to be honest with you. It's a very Athlete Kings Decathlete is acknowledged as one of the better of the button mashers, and I think Virtual Athlete just takes away everything which is really good about that game and makes it into a really bare bones and quite simplistic game. So it's a really weird game because it's one of the few sequels I can think of where I know it's not technically a sequel as such, but it's one of the few games which completely takes away everything from its original. So yeah, very strange.
So just whilst Mike's talking now, I've just fired up on screen. You'll see I've given some of the guys in here very comedy console names because I'm hilarious. So feel free to keep an eye out on them. But if you have played Athlete Kings, this is how Athlete Kings or Decathlete was in the arcade, like in terms of this graphic here. And obviously Virtual Athlete 2K was an arcade console, wasn't it? Because it did have a cab. Mm-hmm. But for some reason they reached this idea of like maybe being a bit more mature or a bit more getting rid of the cartoon nature or the characters. But that is what people loved about Athlete Kings, the Catholic, wasn't it? So I'll just leave that running there, just in case anyone isn't familiar with the footage. I'm gonna be honest. You are gonna see some horrific attempts from me, even more horrific than my usual gameplay capture, because I was very, very rusty on a lot of these games, and I was playing one game and then moving to the other, and so I kept pressing left to do the high jump legs over here, and then when I went on Sydney, I was pressing down, I was kept getting them the wrong way around. And being like, why is he not moving his freaking legs? But,
it's funny because Decathlete, you have to hit up on the joystick to have the feet go over the bars, whereas in Virtua
Sydney is down, isn't it? So I was doing that the wrong way around. So I kept pressing down here and then up on Sydney. So I've got lots of footage of me being very, very bad at the high jump. But the thing Mike mentioned is really weird. It's almost like they had started to go with create a character mode. but then at the end of just decided not really to do it, because you might see some of it come up on the footage as we're going through. If you do well in the arcade mode, you unlock different, like wakeboarding was one I unlocked, or table tennis, or beach handball, something like that. And then you go in when you're setting up a character, when you're naming your character, and you pick their free interests. And the idea is that's then supposed to translate into the inherent skills, the way that in Athlete Kings or Decathlete, one of the guys is very technical, one of the guys is very fast, one of the ladies is very strong and very good at the throwing events. But so it's almost like it was trying to replicate that, but it doesn't really ever explain it.
Almost as like through a more RPG like mechanic.
Yeah. So it's just an odd choice. I feel like I'm sure if anyone ever came on here who was like, oh, this from the development team, this is what it does, we'd be like, oh yeah, but it's not something that really comes across where you play, is it? You're not.
No.
So that was why I was going with the different names. One of the features, and did you guys have a play around with this? I do love that. For example, I've got I think it's the DC characters on at the minute. I made a Mega Drive one. I made a Master System one. I made an Atari Jaguar, because it's a console that gets brought up loads in our little group. I do love that it saves your personal best, and then you can load them in, and you can compete against those times. So you might see some of that footage come up at some stage where there's the other saved footage. Or the other, it's kind of like a ghost account. That's very cool. Did you check that out at all, Brian?
Not really. Yeah, I don't think I really messed with that too much.
I'll just Mike, what about you? Have you ever had a dabble with this, or?
Yes. Yeah, so I know what you mean. Yeah, so all the ghost sort of content, and you can sort of go against other athletes, can't you? As a child, you didn't have a huge amount of people to play console games with. I remember doing that with some games in the past. So it was on other consoles, like pretending you had different people doing different events. So, but that really.
Yeah, so I did. I would.
That sounds sad. It's meant to sound, by the way.
I get what you mean. Yeah, I do like the idea. For me, it's fairly now, because that is ear splitting loud. So here is Jaguar, and here is me loading in one of the other. So it's guest mode. That's what it's called. So here is me loading in one of the guests, and then you go to the VMU and you say, "This is the one I want to bring in." And you should notice this will almost look like 2-player.
Yep.
But it was just me playing against myself. So you see, I've got Sega DC. It's telling me it's best of a time, and then it's got Atari Jaguar. And what's cool about this is when I played with the Jaguar character a few times, and then went back to another character, and it was like a combination of his best ever combos. So you were competing against like the kind of a ghost mode of what was going on. And you can see there with the Dreamcast guy at the end, that's because I was pressing the track and field buttons again. So I was only pressing one power button, even though it told you at the start. So just proof I am an idiot. We've got our first comment of the evening, though. So let's just have a check here. And it's from Gennaro. It says, been listening to the Dream Pod for 2 weeks now and almost finished episode 87. Thanks for the great work and inspiring content. Put about 20 games since I found you guys. Good work. Greetings from Berlin. Gennaro, I hope I've pronounced your name right. Congratulations for making it through the very tough period where I was hosting, because Tom was away and no one else would do it. So I just kind of accepted that I was going to be the guy that no one quite liked as much as the other hosts. But yeah, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the stream. And so I'm just going to turn him down here then. If one of the questions I was going to get you to think about, and you don't have to say this now as we're going through, but if you were giving these a ranking, and I have made far too many captions so far, if you were giving these a ranking, would any of you be thinking that this would be your third game? So this would be the weakest?
Yes.
It's hard to say. So I also wanted to add, there is this combined collection that has Decathlete, Winter Heat, and Virtua. Whoops, my camera orientation there. Yeah, Virtua Athlete 2000 all on one disc for the Sega Ages line on the PlayStation 2 in Japan. what was interesting is that playing them side by side, and they do make a lot of changes to Decathlete. And for example, they put all the events into the stadium setting from Virtua Athlete. So it's a little bit different, and then same with Winter Heat, like has more expanded backgrounds and whatnot. But the characters are all there. But playing them side by side really does, kind of to piggyback on what Mike was saying earlier. I mean, it really does. I don't know, punctuate some of the differences in how these games play. The other thing I would add is Decathlete is just a generally more forgiving game, and so it's not as demanding in like its arcade or tournament mode where you have to you don't really have to be perfect to still do really well. Whereas in Virtua Athlete, you kind of do. And I don't know if I hold that against Virtua Athlete. I kind of appreciate that it's focused on just a few of those events. They're all very tough, but I don't know. They're pretty workable. I feel like it's pretty easy to learn them. And just going through, taking 10 minutes to go through that main, arcade mode or whatever it is. I don't know. I enjoyed it a lot. That quick tournament, that's what it is on the screen there.
Yeah.
I feel like just doing that was probably my favorite experience of any of these games. But not that I would wholeheartedly agree that Virtua Athlete, despite me enjoying it a lot, does pale in comparison certainly to Decathlete. And I think maybe it would feel like a better game if Decathlete, if it wasn't in its shadow.
Yeah. So we seem to have lost Mike temporarily, but I do agree with you. I like this, but I'm aware even that I like this because I'm a bit strange and a bit quirky, and because of what you mentioned, the fact that I was firing through these events over and over and over again, and just thinking, right, I've made one character, I've made a second character, I've made a third character, I've made a fourth, and just trying to see if you could just improve, or can I beat the 769 that I got with that other character. And I did like that kind of that fast-paced thing. I feel like, considering it was a arcade game, it almost would feel better suited to being a console game, because you wouldn't get that in the arcade, would you? Because you'd have a few goes and then you'd probably either run out of money or move on to another tab. So
and it doesn't demand a ton of your time to learn these events.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's easy to jump into it, and you're not going to do very well your first few plays. I'm sure like whatever characters you created first looked very different in their performance compared to the last ones like Atari Jaguar or whatever. Just because through that repetition, just like any good arcade game, you're going to like just kind of build on and learn, just become more familiar. And it does reward that in a way that doesn't require you to spend all day learning the events like maybe Sydney did for me.
Yes, completely. So I'm just going to cut to a question. It says, "Hello, Lewis here. Where's Mike? Also, what do you think of skateboarding?"
Good question. That's what we're asking.
So we're going to answer these in sequence. Hello, Lewis. Mike was here, but we seem to have temporarily lost him. We also seem to have lost the Twitter feed. So apologies to anyone who would normally watch us in that way. I have no idea where that's gone or what's happened. What do you think of skateboarding in the Olympics? I thought it was brilliant, personally. I really enjoy it. I know a few people weren't as interested in it, but I'm not really a massive technical head for skateboarding. So as a casual fan, I was loving it. Would be my my opinion. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not. It's weird because the X Games just happened too, and so I don't know. It's good, but like I feel like when I go into the Olympics, I want to watch the events that I don't get to see very often. And so I did watch a couple of the street finals. I think the one where the kid from Japan, or maybe that was like two of them. Anyway, didn't teenagers just win all of the skateboarding?
With the I think it was the women's category in particular. I think it was a 15-year-old girl, wasn't there? And maybe a 13.
That's right, 13.
But as I said to someone else, we had a run of that in tennis, women's tennis for a while, where a lot of the Martina Hingis, I think she was 15 when she won Wimbledon, and it got to the stage where the game kind of progressed, and we haven't had any teenagers even reach the finals, other than Ostapenko, I think, got to the French Open when she was about 19. So I think it's just one of those things that people are making a big deal out of. So welcome back, Mike. Lewis, I was helping us stall inadvertently. That was not planned. Whilst we were trying to get you back. I'm going to go back to our man from Berlin, though. He said, I have loved all the episodes, but have to mention that Tom leaving for a while felt like the ending of Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. So you definitely had room for Tom on that debris, Kev. It's like, no, I want to host. You get in the Atlantic. Right. So what we were talking about there is just we kind of like Virtua Athlete, if we're honest, Mike.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a fantastic game. And like I was saying, I mean, I really feel like only because it's living in Decathlete's shadow that it seems as disappointing as it is. But as a standalone experience, just to take 10, 15 minutes to go through that arcade mode, I love it. I think it's a blast.
Yeah. Now I'm going to do two things here because I'm a multitasker. I'm going to bring in the intro. We're going to talk about track and field then.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to bring in the intro to this because this sums up why I love these eras of games. And I'm just going to make sure this is on, and we're going to make sure it's turned down. It is the glorious FMV intro. Even though this game came out in 2000, this is so 90s, and I love it. I'm here for this. I love when I get a new game that I've never played before, or sometimes just games that I'm aware of. I will look at the FMV intros on YouTube, and it's just like when we posted this up the other day on Twitter, someone made a comment like, "Oh, games will never look any better than this," and I was like, "Yes, this is why I'm still so into like the Dreamcast and stuff consoles of that era."
Yeah, I just love the virtual Maurice Green too. It's I don't know. It's just on so firmly on the wrong side of the uncanny valley. I love it.
Yeah.
And also I had to look it up to make sure that wasn't Crush 40 doing the soundtrack song.
No, it's the sound is every time it comes on, I'm thinking maybe I should get a guitar. Like that, it has that kind of 90s dad rock influence on me where I'm like, man, I'm loving this. Mike, do you like the intro at least?
I mean, it's cheesy. Yeah. Why not?
Oh yeah.
Why not? Why not? Indeed. So, did either of you guys then play? Or how much of this did you play? Because I'm going to try and keep out the way on this one. Mike, let's go with you. What are your thoughts? Your honest thoughts? Imagine I'm not here. What are your honest thoughts on international track and field?
It doesn't look great. The game it's probably the worst looking of the three, I think, that we're looking at tonight. I think its origins on another platform, which we mentioned, is probably quite clear. I just think it's Konami sort of have a thing where they have to go back to the track and field, don't they, a lot, and it doesn't really feel like it's doing. It's not a 2000 release of track and field. It's not sort of building a huge amount on that title. It's just quite a generic, quite a simple. I don't like the game. You might have already gathered that from my response, but it's just a bit basic for me. Doesn't really do much. You've got to unlock some events. It's not really. And it has that. I have a real thing with, and I know Kev knows this because I've talked to him about this before, but I have a real thing when you have these Olympic Games and the times and the scores and the distances are so unrealistic. I have a real issue where the very first time I play one of these games, when I break every single world record, sort of makes the game slightly pointless in my mind. And a few of these titles do suffer from that. And this is one which suffers from it quite badly. You're either very, very good at an event or you fail dramatically. So the balancing's a bit off, which Virtua Athlete didn't do quite as bad as, but this one's but I think the biggest thing for me overall is the fact it just looks really, really poor. It's really angular. I think it's not poor as in it's not an awful looking game in terms of look at that crowd. Look at the crowd. It's not an awful looking game in terms of what's come before. It's just that compared to its contemporaries and what else is on Dreamcast library, it's quite it sticks out quite heavily as being quite poorly.
Yeah, the characters do look a bit like they made a track and field game in like a beta version of the Unreal Engine. Everyone is so swole, regardless of what event they're doing. And I think what Mike was alluding to is, and I didn't get this out because they're packed away somewhere, but there was, I think it was the 97 International Track and Field on the original PlayStation, the PS1. It does look like a kind of slightly, I don't know if up-res is the right term, but it looks like they've just done a tiny bit of work to that.
It's
really
definitely
like
using. It really looks like it's using those PlayStation character models. I mean,
so
which a lot of Dreamcast games did. I mean, it's not the only one.
Yeah, I do like the fact that there is almost no finesse to this. It is like sheer power, to the extent that I realized I didn't make a caption for this, but I did tell Brian that this was coming. When we would play this at university, I've got maybe 12 Dreamcast pads in the house. So anything that's kind of colored variation, I didn't know existed at the time, I've bought since as a collector. But any of the white pads, if you look through, you could pick out the 6 pads I owned in 2000 to 2003, because all of the button areas in here are completely sheened. They're completely worn free. Because the style that we had with this was literally, you'd have your head down and you'd have your fingers and you'd wrap them back and forwards, to the extent that when I've been practicing this game, I give myself a blister and I had to start wearing a plaster because my fingers aren't used to it anymore. So that is why, if you look at some of our records on here, because this is our original VMU, the 100 meters was 9.23 seconds, and I can't get anywhere near that anymore. And I think my javelin record on here is 111 meters. And again, the other day I was throwing about 104 once I'd had a bit of practice, and I was just thinking, how did we ever get such distances?
Yeah, I think one thing as well is the fact that we talked earlier on about the fact, is this genre called, could it be legitimately called the button masher genre? I think this game is probably the most of the button mashing. It doesn't really have much difference. I think I can't think exactly what other sports are in the game. I think gymnastics is in it, isn't it? Is a revolt? Was that the PS1 only?
No, there are. I think you unlock the vault. Yeah, you unlock the vault one, and then
weightlifting.
High bar is there. Yeah, when weightlifting's there.
And weightlifting,
but it's funny
both of them
they
are very
still call
same,
it track and field, which is funny.
Now
exactly.
Scan on to weightlifting here. Weightlifting. I'm convinced that it would be easier for me to get in enough condition to lift 220 kilograms than it would be for me to be able to lift the types of weights in game. This is arduous to weightlifting on this game. And it's to the extent it is possibly one of my least favorite offense in any button mashing game, because it's like you have to build up the power to do the clean, I think it's called, isn't it? You have to build up the power to do the jerk, and then you have to do this part here where you have to build the power up and then keep it in that kind of glowing area there for 3 seconds, and you have to do that 3 times. So it's like if you're playing this single player, by the time you get to weightlifting, it's just like, I might go downstairs for 7 minutes.
It's not well implemented. It's not very well balanced. It's not a particularly fun game, which I think is probably, if they're not getting the game to be fun and it's got a multi-event title, it's probably lost its main priority.
Something I realized I didn't touch on over here. How do you guys like 1500 meters on either of these games?
Oh, I originally, I don't know, years ago, especially in Decathlete, I didn't really care for it, but I love it now. I think it's fun.
I'm the same. I absolutely love that. It loses some of the charm from Athlete King to 2K, because it gets rid of the kind of Chariots of Fire,
bouncy
people bouncing into you and pushing you forward.
It's still good. I still really enjoy trying to work out the kind of strategies, or like getting a good time on that. Whereas with weightlifting, I kind of figured out I could lift 250 fairly easily. It would always win me the gold, so I would always just lift that and stop.
Yeah, exactly. I think the 1500 meters is actually quite good on the triathlete. I think, as I'm sure you remember, Kev. Obviously, when we grew up on Spectrums and 8-bit micros, having to do the 1500 meters in Dave Thompson's decathlon, we had to just literally press the buttons for the entire race. Was a an experience many of us had to live through as children.
Brian, do you have a favorite event on this?
I kind of like the hammer throw, maybe. Only because it incorporated the rhythm part as well, and you had to, because I think it had the icon that circles around, so you have to aim in addition to building up strength. And I feel like the act of having to do that and worry about both of those simultaneously just made it a lot more fun to fail at and then replay over and over to get better.
Here he is here, yeah. So I got a prop just for the hammer throw. The key to this is stopping it in that little Pac-Man mouth. Imagine this is how I was used to explain it to people. So you have to imagine that's Pac-Man's mouth there. You have to stop it in there. So I'll just hit play on that. But yeah, so this is one that I do like as well. Yeah, so it's like build the power, get the angle right, let it go. This is probably one of the worst character models, though. Bizarrely enough, it's like they used a different character model for Hammer. He looks like one of the mole people from Ocarina of Time. If you think about what I mean, you'll see it there where he's celebrating.
Like a Goron or something.
A Goron, that's it. I couldn't remember what they were called. They're like rock people, aren't they?
Or Gorgon? Yeah, I can't remember.
You fake Nintendo fan. Don't even know what they're called. Yeah. Mike, what about you? You got a favorite event on this?
I'd probably say, to be honest, hammer throw again. It's a bit of a cop out, I know, but it's the only one of the athletics events which is sort of a bit different, isn't it? That's something a bit different, and that's always fun after you've got to play every other event's the exact same sort of control method, having something a bit different. So
it is. I will concede it's a very dumb game. And playing it solo recently, I've not enjoyed as much. Now we did hit on this. I can't remember if this is the one that's in the game. Or if this is the one you unlock through the trial mode, because I think it's Vault. There's Vault and parallel bars. Yeah, I do like this. You can see my Shenmue skills coming through with here, but this is when we used to play this. I'd very rarely ever win any of the events, but I would always win the overall championship purely through being the only person who could do the gymnastics. But that's probably why I like them.
But this one was good. I think this reminds me of Olympic Gold a lot as well, because Olympic Gold had it was diving, wasn't it? Which is sort of similar to this in terms of you had to remember what pattern to press. So
the reason why I captured this footage, when I was playing through, I was thinking for the very first time. Thinking, do you know what? Mike might be right. This game might be a bit stupid, because this I feel like this is the only event that you have to kind of show any kind of mental dexterity for, and you actually have to watch the screen for it. Whereas, like I said, with some of the other ones, it is literally head down, button tap away, or as Mike used by a few people, at the teaspoon. Did you ever know anyone who did this? So I wish they'd brought a teaspoon up now. So imagine I've got one of my kids. Play-Doh things here. So you would trap a teaspoon kind of in like the arch of your hand, and then you would get it on the pad with its curved back. And
I think it's officially banned by WADA now as an official. It's part of the anti-doping thing, because in my house as a teenager, if someone tried to do a spoon, they would be banned. No, can't do that. No.
I used to ban it because I just like. Pads were really expensive when you were younger. I was like, get that teaspoon off my controller. Now, Brian, you mentioned using the joystick for some of these games.
Honestly, I couldn't really. I don't know. I feel like I tried to play all three of these games with the gamepad, and they just became more the carpal tunnel games for me. So I really just couldn't keep playing them that way. And I luckily I don't have a arcade stick for my Dreamcast, unfortunately, but I do have a Total Control 3. I think it was like EMS, the company, but it's essentially it's a converter that you can plug in a Saturn arcade stick and then as well as a VMU into it, and it'll just function. As far as whether it adds lag and stuff, I haven't really tested to that degree, or at least noticed or cared. But yeah, that's how I've been playing it with the Hori arcade stick. I forget what it's called, but anyway, yeah. And I think it's a lot easier because the way I play it, I'll try to get I'll put like the stick down on a flat surface and just hammer the buttons, kind of almost vibrate my fingers on them. And having big buttons kind of helps because you have a lot more surface space to just, make errors and stuff and still make the inputs. And I found that didn't hurt my wrists as much, and it was a lot easier, especially for the button mashy events, to just go a lot faster, more comfortably. And also, that's just the way that like Virtua Athlete and Decathlete, that's the way those games were originally meant to be played. They were arcade games. There was a reason why that setup actually works as well as it does. So I really enjoyed playing all three of those games that way.
Yep. So just before we move on to the final game, then you can see that on screen I've got trap shooting, which is one of the other ones that you unlock. I think it was vault, trap shooting, and triple jump, I believe, are the three that aren't open originally. It doesn't really tell you anywhere in the game how you unlock them. I remember we would play the championship mode over and over and over again till we realized you had to win gold on all of the trial modes, and it was through doing that you unlock these. If you were picking, we're going to move on to Sydney, which also has trap shooting, but it's very different. Skeet shooting stuff. If you were picking a favorite, Mike, favorite shooting event, which I do prefer the Konami one on here, if I'm being honest. But what about you? What say you, Mike? Sydney?
Yes, yeah.
Brian?
I actually didn't play them that much. And also, huge caveat for the arcade stick thing, doesn't work as well with skeet shooting on especially on Sydney 2000. So that one you have to plug in a regular controller for, and I don't know, it was fine. It's not really what I come to these games to play necessarily. But then again, I was surprised by a lot of other events in Sydney 2000, which we'll probably get to, that I was really impressed that I enjoyed as much as I did, and wasn't expecting to.
Right, yeah. So we are going to move on to Sydney. I'm just trying to find the video, because we've had the other intros, so let's have this. I do like this kind. I know why Mike likes this straight away. This looks like a promo video that the BBC would push out for a history of the Olympics video. It's chock full of like memorable moments. Yep. Jesse Owen is in there. I think Cram is in there. So it's like Thompson is in there, who we've mentioned a few times. So it's got that kind of nice 90s FMV. I personally, I never used to like this. Me and Mike always used to kind of argue about this. But replaying it as a single player game by myself in 2021, I have really got into the way that this is set up as a single player game. Yeah. The things that I previously didn't like about it are now the reason why I'm finding myself preferring it. Yeah. Which is the different modes, the different events. I do think it's a very ugly game, if I'm being honest. It's got very kind of PS1 graphics again. Weird proportions on the athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not a great port, is it, compared to the PC version, which looked pretty good at the time. So that might be more to do with the developers. I know it's developed by ATD, isn't it? Which is the same developers as the lovely looking Ducati World, which is awful. So
yeah, attention to detail. This was one of their. They made this, and they made about 2 other games afterwards, and that was the end of them, sadly. Which is a shame, because there's some stuff. So there's some stuff here that I really like. For example, it's a really long intro. This is still just the intro going on before it cuts in. Now, I do feel like this is the worst game in terms of signposting, or just giving you a hand in terms of what you should be doing, either at the events, or in terms of the modes. Do you think that's fair, Mike?
I think it's a different style of game, isn't it? It's not meant to be a sort of a quick arcade multiplayer experience like the other two games are. So you have to have that sort of quick access to the control mechanism. This is meant to be a game where you learn and you develop your skills in sport over time. So I think it's a different sort of format. If they did it that way, if they had that sort of how to play option on there, I think it would be a lot simpler, and that isn't what they were trying to go for. Whether successful or not is up to everyone to have their own opinion about, but I think that's why they didn't do it for.
Yeah, exactly. I agree completely. And in fairness to the game, or the I don't know, their vision for that, I mean, there are the demos you can watch that will conceptually guide you through like how to strategize the events. This is the only one that I actually felt like I had to look at the manual, because that does just tell you how to do everything and what the controls do. So you know, it's there, it's just out, you know, you have to, it's not in the game in the way it is with the other two right before each of them.
Oh, is there a huge disadvantage in that regard, Brian, which is the sense that my copy of this does not have a manual, and I've been looking for one online since, and I had to go to like Gamer FAQ and read someone's PlayStation instructions that they put up. And so there's another comment from Fear Anarchy. I almost missed this. Glad to catch this. Glad to have you with us. So if you could see on screen, straight away, this is a clear winner by the amount of events that it's got. And touching on what I've said, the first time I put this up for this show, because I had played this before, one of the ways that the signposting is weak is there is no description of what some of these events are when you're on this mode.
Sure.
So to begin with, I was looking at the one of the guy underneath, like the one at the start. I was like, what is that? Is that supposed to be 100-meter start? And I was like, well, obviously that one's hurdles, that one's juggling. But like to begin with, I had no idea what some of those events were. I think
they're going for the sort of Olympic pictogram sort of style, aren't they? That's the thing. So yeah, they haven't done it very well, but I think that's what they're trying to do.
And then this I really got into with the triple jump, I believe it was, that kind of begun to win me over. This kind of mode where you start off as an athlete, you pick which athlete you want to do, what country you are, but you're aiming, you pick an event, you start like, I think it's called like club level, isn't it? And your guy doesn't have any skill points, so it's got this kind of RPG progression system. I was terrible at this treadmill, and even after reading 5 or 6 things about it and watching watching a few videos, I still don't really know what to do on it. As you can see, I'm quitting out here. There's a lot of pausing whilst I was playing this and having to go away. But some of the other stuff, bench press, for example, doing the shooting event, there's like a kind of duck shooting gallery. So you have to build up your points, then you have to qualify, which then consolidates it, and then you can move on to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. And the idea is you eventually qualify for the Olympics, go to the Olympics and try and compete. I do like the fact that they're in different stadiums and stuff like that. The main Olympics to the event. So here I am here really struggling to figure out the controls for bench press. But once I got my head around this, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Is this, Mike, why you've always preferred this one?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's got more depth, hasn't it? It's just got more to it. Some of the training games get boring after a while. There's a couple of events where you haven't got to do all the training to get yourself to a level where you can compete. But the fact that when you first start 100 meters, for instance, you won't get anywhere faster than 11.5 to 12.5, whatever it is. And that's the qualifying standard. So you have to improve gradually, which is something which doesn't happen much in games at all. I liked Tokyo 2020 because it tried to do that a little bit, because it's tried again with sort of 3 rounds of each event, and progressively harder. Olympic Games don't tend to go for that. And Sydney 2000 was the first one. I think it was definitely the first one at the time, and didn't really have much competition afterwards either. Games didn't touch back on it again, but it does get a little bit tedious though if you have to do the same training event over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this at the time. And Brian, I don't know if you would have been aware of this. You might have been similar to me, being a bit newer to this. I played the triple jump for maybe an hour to get to the stage where we're at now, of being at the Olympics. Whereas when I was playing with it afterwards, that I don't have any footage of, I'd have a go at the 100 meters. I'd come out,
right.
I'd have a go at the cycling, which I still can't do, to be honest. I still can't figure out what you're supposed to be doing on that. I love kayaking on this. I think that's really a great event.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kayak's great. The only problem with the kayak on Dreamcast, and the problem with all these events on Dreamcast, is there's a lot of slowdown. And there is a bit of technical issues. It's not on the PC version is much smoother. So the kayak was a much more, or sort of not much more, but it's more enjoyable on the PC. But Dreamcast does it pretty well. It's a really good event.
Yeah, I loved it because it was one that I felt like I had to be engaged for an extended period of time, but strategize, throughout the course. I'd almost have to memorize it and replay it like a racing game to really get that strategy down and refine my approach. So I still am in the middle of that curve, and I'm kind of looking forward to going back to it and trying to improve my time and approach to all the gates. And I also love, and it's something I wish other games did, but the water physics and how it handled currents and different eddies and ways you had to kind of strategize your positioning in the water and how that could make it easier to either backpedal or take different approaches. So I feel like it was just a super nuanced event and just a ton of fun to kind of learn. Even when I was first trying it and failing a lot, going through gates the wrong way, missing gates, it was still a lot of fun to be like, oh, cool, I'll try that next time. I'll try to combo those gates together so I don't end up on the other side of the river or whatever. I loved it. In fact, you can make a whole game out of that as a central mechanic and then build a full racing game of sorts with it. I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
I think the only other game which had slower minute, I think it was either Athens or Beijing. I can't remember which one it was now, but did the same event because at the time the canoe slalom was one of the IOC sports which they wanted to really promote, so they did it in some games. I can't remember whether it was 2004, 2008. They did it again. It was awful. There's a couple of things like that. A couple of times they tried games. Judo on Beijing 2008 being a particular one I remember being appalling and not implemented well at all. But it's good to see that they try and branch out a little bit more and just not do the standard events. So it's always a good fun. I think also worth mentioning as well the fact that the whole progression isn't only just simply to give the game more depth. It also changes the character's look. The characters build up and change their appearance as you go through. So I think it's a really cool, neat little addition. It's got a nuanced little addition out there.
So I've got a really good question here. It says, at the end of the day, is this worthwhile as a game? Worthwhile because it is Dreamcast, and is it remarkable as a rare theme for the smallerish library that Dreamcast has for the 99 to 02 era? One of the things we normally do out here is we'll look at the prices of games and we'll decide whether you should try and buy it. I would say I would try Track and Field because it's really cheap. As good as Sydney is, or as much as I've enjoyed Sydney this time around, I would just look for the cheapest format. If you're after Dreamcast games, I would buy the Dreamcast version. But if you are just after having a go, personally, I would probably say there isn't much difference between. My biggest memory of this from the time was playing it at friends on the PlayStation. So if you have got access to a PlayStation and it happens to be cheaper on there, I would probably just advise that. Personally, what about you guys?
I would say that Sydney is worth it. I think Sydney's actually a good game. It probably nostalgia part of it as well for me. It's probably not actually as good maybe as that, but I think it's a decent game. I think it's probably one of the better officially licensed Olympic games up until maybe the Sonic and Mario games. A Virtua Athlete I think is probably no. I don't think it's really worth the time, and same with ESPN. However, all three are pretty cheap. Nothing's going to cost you a massive amount. If you look into some extra additions to your Dreamcast collection in a physical sense, none of them are going to break the bank, put it that way, unless you're looking for one of the sort of slightly rare oddities. It's worth mentioning as well that Sydney 2000 is the only game to have an official printed Australian version for the PALs. So it's got an official Australian commentary team as well on the actual game. obviously being based in Australia at the time. So for a collector's perspective, it's a little bit an oddity like that. But yeah, all three are very, very cheap. I'm not sure the current prices, but I'm sure they're all three of them are still bag of chips, as we like to say.
I would actually caveat that Virtua Athlete is not as cheap as it used to be. You can go for the Japanese version, and it's probably pretty inexpensive still. But I think the PAL and North American versions are starting to. Well, there's just a lot fewer listings for them. I just looked it up because I'm curious on that.
Thanks for being context, isn't it? Because I think
they're going for like at least $22-30. Which isn't terrible. Compared to $5 for Sydney,
yeah. What
I would say if you are watching this and you're like us and you're like, I'm really into button mashers, I'd say just get them all. Just get them all and give them a try if you can afford it. Does have online functions, so they may come back eventually, but it is only 7 events. It's so Sega, isn't it? It's everything about it. Like the menus look like the menus from Virtual Striker, and they look like the menus from Sega Worldwide Soccer from the Saturn. So if you are a Sega head, as you probably are, being part of the stream or watching this back later, I would say I would get that if that's the thing you're after. But ultimately, it's very hard for me to say because I own them all, and I will buy any button mashing game that I see, like Winter Olympics, themes, Summer Olympics, whatever. So it's very difficult for me to say, to be honest. I would say yes, but then I'm an idiot. I'm aware of that. So in terms of the genres of games that I like, one of the things that I do like, that I'm just going to click on, really like about Sydney is the closing ceremony that they have. So after they all have, like, if you win, oh, here's the guy holding the medal. But after you get that in Sydney, you then, once you've finished all your events, and this was an interesting caveat as well. If you qualified for the Olympics with, say, only 5 of those 11 events, whatever it is, you could only do those 5. So there is a progression system between. You have to keep qualifying, like reloading and qualifying. I'm just going to put this up because this is glorious. I was loving this when I unlocked this. And then in a minute, it's like some lads come out with some flags, which I know Mike. I was like, of course Mike likes this. It's got flags in it.
Yeah.
So, are they all accurate, Mike?
They are, yeah.
Nice bit of steel drum. It's like, I hate to say it, but I think you've been right all along, Mike. Not easy for me to say that, Brian.
No, I mean, I actually didn't play through the full Olympic mode, so this is the first time I'm seeing this sequence, which is a nice attention to detail. And I also we talked about how shitty the visuals were earlier for this game, but other aspects of the presentation, it really reminded me of that kind of early 2000s IDOS where everything was a little sterile. You might have like a drum and bass soundtrack, especially if you were playing through the practice events that had like kind of that simple background soundtrack. You had like a didgeridoo in the theme for
I like that.
It's there were aspects of the presentation that I thought they did really well, even if technically it's not great. They clearly put some heart into it. You got fireworks here. Like, I love that. And I think I have a broader point about these games in general. And that's, to me, they didn't really play so differently that I felt like, the distance in quality was that drastic between them. I think they're all pretty good. Sydney probably has the most meat on those bones, probably the best game, but I love Virtua Athlete as well. And one of the reasons is because I think I really do think presentation in general takes an outsized import for a genre like this, where really just having that level of charm and vibrancy and all those flourishes. I love the stadium design and the character models in Virtua Athlete. Like, those kind of drew me in, as well as the soundtrack and other aspects of the presentation, in ways that help differentiate these games from each other. Just because the gameplay isn't necessarily always going to do that as much. And
yeah,
I think that's totally legitimate for them.
And as you can see, that event has only just finished. That closing ceremony event has only just stopped there. And then look, so it's like triple jump, congratulations, you got the goal. That was at like at the end of an hour of just trading for triple jump. I did feel pretty pleased. I was like, yes, I've done it, Mum. I've won the gold for Japan. Yeah. So we touched on this before. We're coming towards the end of the stream now, but I've got another little section to end. So if I was asking you, we'll start with you, Brian. If you were ranking your top three, you're putting these three games on the podium. Who are you putting in bronze? Who are you putting in silver? And who are you putting in gold?
I want to put some more time into Sydney 2000 because the top of that podium is going to either that or Virtua Athlete. I think they're very different games and they have very different aims and the type of experiences they're trying to be. I really appreciate Virtua Athletes just, jump in and really just have that quick arcade experience. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Going back to Fear Anarchy's question earlier, I honestly, even if it's a little inflated in price, I think it's worth it if that is, if that classic Sega, arcade structure and charm appeals to you, because I think it does have that. Even if we're comparing it next to Decathlete, maybe it's Decathlete does it better, but anyway, or you can just get this if you have a mod chip or Japanese PS2, and you can have all three experiences right there. I forgot what the question is, but yeah, those two.
Yeah, so rank the games.
Right now, Virtua Athlete on gold. I would put Sydney silver and ESPN bronze, but I still liked ESPN a lot. Like just because it's lower on the podium doesn't mean I thought it was a bad game. And yes, Pen. If Pen was allowed in these Olympics, that's like fucking doping, man. That would just be far and away the best game. That's not fair.
Haunting character design though.
That's part of the charm.
Well, my top three.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't come to a surprise. Sydney 2000 number one. I think Virtua Athlete number two. I think ESPN number three. I would say that as well as Pen being a good show for an edition, Sports Jam would also be a game which I would include in this sort of event, which I think it would probably be. I think Sports Jam would probably take the gold medal, to be honest with you.
Hold that for just 1 second, then, mate. I'm going to close with mine. I'm going to put Virtua Athlete in bronze. I'm going to have Sydney photo finish in second for the time being, and then purely for the nostalgia reasons, track and field. But I feel like if you ask me again in a week, 2 weeks, that might have changed around. Yep. So we're going to end with something that I just touched on then. So imagine we were having a Dreamcast Olympics, okay? So we were holding an Olympics entirely.
Virtua Tennis too. Sorry. Didn't mean
I was going to say that. So other things that you could bring in. So I was going to say darts from Shenmue. Brian has got one, I imagine, which is tennis, virtual tennis 2.
Yeah.
50-kilometer walk, Shenmue 2.
Forklift racing.
Right, so forklift racing, we could have in our Dreamcast Olympics, but it wouldn't be in the real one because they don't have motorsport, do they?
No. Golf.
Which
Tony
golf
Hawk. Well, I think it has to be Tee Off 2, isn't it? Or Golf Share 2. But you've got loads of skateboarding, all the new ones. I mean, apart from sport climbing, I don't think any of the new ones haven't got a Dreamcast game. You've got Championship Surfer, you've got skateboarding, you've got
how about graffiti rollerblading?
Yeah.
Or does Chow Garden, Chow raising count as an Olympic sport?
I don't think it's yeah.
What about
Sega Bass Fishing?
Bass Fishing, yeah, I'm sure she'll get in. I can't remember the name of this one now, but there is a 3-on-3 basketball game, isn't there? I've still not played it.
NBA Showtime.
Showtime?
NBA on NBC.
Hoops.
That's what it's called. Hoops.
It's got Shaquille O'Neal on it, hasn't it?
Yeah, Hoops.
So I've never played that, but I know that's 3-on-3. So you could have that one. Virtual Striker 2 you could put in to recreate rugby, because that is the sport that game is closest to, because it's all about just wanging it into the other half. Sadly, there isn't a football game that you could put in there that you could use. Is there anything else then? Did you mention Sports Jam, Mike? What?
Yes, I mean, Sports Jam's got several games. Not really Olympic sports as much, and it's got mostly team sports, isn't it? But there's golf in there, a bit of ice hockey, a bit of cycling in there. Sort of a strange American football stroke 100-meter dash hybrid button masher event. Sports Jam is the sequel to Athlete and Winter Heat that we deserved, I think. It's probably more of a sequel in terms of its actual feel than Virtua Athlete was.
Another good one from Jano, Seaman hugging.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
You need the mic for that though, don't you? So I don't think everyone would have that. So is there anything else? I'm just gonna have a scan. We got ready to rumble.
Ready to rumble. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't. As the years go along, I like that game less and less, and so it's hard to. Yeah.
You got lots of games, the karate style games in. Lots of games you could sort of try and
UFC. You could maybe
UFC. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Judo in there. Yeah.
Well, I've never played these, but what are the Japanese only wrestling games like? Is it Grand Slam?
Giant Gram.
And Fire Pro, is it?
There's another one as well. It's cool. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty good, but it's it's
commercial wrestling rather than Olympic.
Yeah.
Wrestling. Right.
How about Power Smash? Or no, is that the name? That's the name of the
tennis.
Sorry. Yeah. What was the
Cosmic Smash?
Wireframe one. Cosmic Smash. Yeah.
It's like squash. Do they have squash in the Olympics?
Oh yeah.
Badminton. Nice.
Yeah, I think we'd be stretching to try and find a badminton style game on the.
We could say that charging back is badminton.
Virtual tennis, just with lobs.
Oh, Virtua Tennis 2 is by far my favorite. Although Pen Triathlon might be on the podium somewhere.
More of a winter one, though, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There is snowboarding in the ESPN Extreme, isn't there? Is it snowboarding mixed with hand gliding, or my?
Oh, Sega Extreme Sports.
Sports.
Yeah, that's another good shout. Actually, another good one in terms of mix of sports. You've got bungee jumping and mountain biking. Mountain biking obviously is by Olympics. So you've got BMX riding as well, obviously with Dave Mirra and Matt Hoffman. Skateboarding games, obviously with Tony Hawks and that Tailburn TV Sports one.
I wish Rippin' Riders was I wish I liked that game more.
Yeah, the game with many names.
Yeah, that's true. I forget what it's called in
Snow Surfers.
That's right.
And Cool Borders Burn.
Yeah.
Which is the
that's the best name.
Yeah.
But yeah. Because it's not just burn, it's burn.
Yeah.
I like the pun there. I like it.
Okay, so we have come to the natural conclusion of the Olympics. It's time for our own closing ceremony. With that in mind, I would just like to say thank you to our guests once again. So thank you to Brian, the man in the Sega hat, at Virtual Schlub. I still have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, Brian.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Actually, can I plug a couple of other Olympic-related things we've done recently?
Go for it.
So I host the Saturn Junkyard Titancast. We have a podcast. And the last episode we did was all about decathlete. So if you're interested in just hearing our extended thoughts, I also want to give a shout out to, there's our website for it. I also want to give a shout out to Nuno, who is on the cast. One of his all-time favorite games is Virtua Athlete, or at least his favorite Dreamcast game. So so he was going through, on that cast, he was talking all about his fond memories of that, which at the time, a couple of weeks ago, I actually hadn't played it as much, so I was less familiar to be able to chime in on Virtua Athlete as I am today. But so we go all in on decathlete on that one. And then also I wrote an article on my personal blog called thevirtuaplanet.com. And it's all about beach spikers for the GameCube. It's the AM2 developed beach volleyball game that I would say is sort of in the vein. I think the closest parable is probably Virtua Tennis. It's like in that style. Yeah, I really enjoyed that game a lot. So if you want to read about my extended wacky shenanigans through that world tour mode.
I don't have a link to your blog. I did have a link to the setting because I was going to plug that. So
and then I think I've recorded a thing. Well, I don't know when it'll appear, but on Radio Sega they'll be doing having a recording that I did that it's kind of an adaptation, but also / review of the game.
Cool. Well, I would consider ourselves friends and affiliates of Radio Sega. So if you just keep an eye on the Dreamcast Junkyard account, we will pop that out.
Yeah, I'll be shout out to KC from the Sega Lounge on that one.
And then Mike, is there anything you would like to plug? You are at @space_turnip.
Not really. Just we've got a new podcast of the Dream Pod coming out this week. It's out, I think it's tomorrow, possibly. Lewis might shout at me for saying that, but I think it's out this week.
It is out, yeah. That was it is coming out tomorrow. I knew he was delaying it to make sure it didn't clash with this stream. And then a peek behind the curtain, this stream almost didn't happen this evening due to some Olympic-style projectile vomiting from my daughter. But she is, at least as I'm aware, she's tucked up in bed, feeling slightly better now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It is good, yeah, for me.
Well, that she's feeling better.
Oh, I thought you were on about the fact that I had a break, Brian. So we have been the @DC Junkyard Video Game Book Club, and all I'm going to say is I'm going to let you know this is the most notice I've ever given you for the next game that we're going to have coming up. But the August version is going to be Tony Hawk 1 and 2. So at least one of them is one of my favorite games of all time.
Nice.
And so obviously very, very excited about this. And I know it's one of the ones that in the chat on Discord, people are always saying, do Tony Hawk. So we've listened. We're doing Tony Hawk. And by I say we listen, I mean, me and Mike planned most of these games in like December of last year. When I was like, I think we should do them in this order. And he was just like, yep, because that meant minimal work for him because it had all been planned then. So there we are. So thank you very much. If you've not picked these one up, Jano from Berlin, definitely. Everyone should own Tony Hawk 1 and 2. Thank you for stopping by as well. It's great to have a new listener, friend. Feel free to head over to the Dreamcast Junkyard Discord if you would like to talk some more with some other Sega heads. Thank you very much, guys. And I'm going to leave you with the closing ceremony.
Nice.
Here we go. Let's get some sound on this. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.
Say goodbye, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kev. Have a good one.
No problem. And I'm also going to say goodbye, Mike. Goodbye, Mike.